Hello?
We can hear you, Donna. Thank you. All right, being 7 o'clock, we'll call the Marathon County Board of Supervisors to order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing. Following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
and to the republic for which it stands,
under
one
God,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll have the reading of the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street in the city of Wausau at 7 p.m. on Thursday, October 19th, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. I'd like to request everyone silence their cell phones or put them on vibrate as to not to be an interruption to the meeting, and I thank you for your compliance. We will move on to roll call, and I'd ask everyone sign in to meeting, open meeting, please. Just let me know. Several of the individuals that are joining us by WebEx have not signed in through Open Meetings. If you could, please use the Open Meetings app to sign in. That way you can, if you wish to address an item on the agenda you can request to speak. If you're having challenges with that, we'll have the clerk mark you present. And we will move on to thank and recognize the visiting audience that we have with us this evening, and thank them for their interest in county government. And we will move on to public comment. We do have with us 3 individuals who have signed up to speak. And because the public comment period is 15 minutes, we have 3 individuals. They will each be given up to 5 minutes. And so the first we have is Mr. Dave Eckman. So Dave, please, if you come up and the microphone and address your comments to the chair, and the board will also be able to hear all of your comments. So you can move the mic up this way. Yeah. You're supposed to face the chair. Yeah.
Face you.
Yep.
Got
please.
it. All right.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. Chair Gibbs, board, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to share some words with you. So when I'm here tonight to talk about the child care, okay, and what I'm asking more for so tonight is from this board is the strong consideration that I understand the resolution. I totally understand it. But from an economic development perspective, child care, workforce development, economic development are one in the same today. When I was with McDevco, when I ran McDevco over a decade ago, the complexity of economic development was much different. It was about accessing capital. Today, it's about talent. We have over 300 manufacturers in Marathon County. It's our strongest suit in terms of the industry sector, and then healthcare, finance, insurance. I can tell you right now, based on the companies that we work with at the Chamber of Commerce, Greater Wausau Prosperity Partnership that Renee works with. Childcare is an issue for employers. I just got back from Madison. I was at 2 days of meeting with Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, and I'm on the board with many corporations from around Wisconsin. Same challenge. The challenge we face is so complex that for us, we need to first understand what that problem is, all of us. So that's business and industry, it's government, it's this board, it's the city council, it's elected bodies, it's school boards. It's going to require an understanding before we act and go do some things. And so what I'm asking for you tonight is, while you're making this decision, please don't close the doors for possibilities in the future. We don't have enough information yet. We know that the state, the governor has some things moving forward. The Assembly has some things moving forward. The Senate has things moving forward. Businesses want to be at the table as they're going to be at the table as part of this solution. I can tell you that now. I heard it yesterday. I've heard it from our members. The importance of a strong public-private partnership, we can address this. A community that addresses this and begins to develop solutions for families and for business is going to win in the talent game, without question. So incumbent on us is what we're doing is holding a town hall next week with our businesses, and we invite all of you to come and learn with us that we know this challenge is huge, it's complex, it's going to require the state, possibly the federal, but more likely the state government to start to develop some incentives, initiatives to help business invest into their families that work for them, and to develop infrastructure. NTC's created a whole new program to bring workforce into this childcare workforce. We're going to need county government. This is not a time to sit on the sideline. You can't be, really. There's so much in this world that we are in economic development where we require all bodies of government, education, not-for-profits, business and industry to be at the ready to create solutions. So with that, I would ask you, before you make a decision tonight, come and learn with us. Just come and learn. There's nothing wrong with coming to that town hall next week, engaging with business and industry, and fully understand the problem that we all face. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kay Palmer. Kay, please.
Thank you for allowing me this time. I'm Kay Palmer. My municipality is Wausau. I am a part of the Wausau Child Care Organization. I've been following Resolution 5523 since the beginning conversations. My intent here tonight is to provide a perspective from the child care provider. As I have listened, I have heard that there is an idea that the preferred approach to child care is that a parent or family member stays home with the child or children. I can appreciate that being an ideal situation, but one size does not fit all. As we look around this room, we can easily see we're all different. I don't think I fit in my supervisor's clothes, Supervisor Robinson. I don't think they'd fit me. I don't think we have the same lifestyle either. We can expand that out to see how different families have different situations. In some cases, a parent or grandparent staying with the children is the perfect solution, but not in all cases. There are cases where there is not a second parent for a variety of reasons, or situations where both incomes are needed, or it is a function of fulfillment and purpose that both parents choose to work. In theory, the lack of childcare should not be the driver in that decision-making process as to whether a parent can join the workforce or be in the workplace. There may not be a grandparent in a position to retire or take on the responsibility or even live in the area who can care for the children while parents are working, again, for a variety of reasons. There are an infinite number of possibilities that have to be considered when deciding the right path to childcare that best suits the situation. It's not a one-size-fits-all. The whole point of supporting the childcare industry is to give parents a choice of options that best suits their situation, not to jam them into a one-size-that-fits-few. It is not a function of the government dictating how parents should care for the children. It's about giving parents options. There has been conversation about the regulations in childcare, that if the regulations would go away or be diminished, all would be well. From my perspective, the regulations provide guardrails to keep our children safe. Not any different from the guardrails that we see on sharp turns or where there's a steep drop-off in the roadway or on pathways. I'm hoping that none of you has had a close encounter with a guardrail. They serve a purpose. I welcome any of you to visit our centers so that you can see how the regulation guardrails are working in reality. WASA child care teachers are responsible for the play structure and lesson plans for the children in our care. And as administrators, we're responsible for providing a nurturing environment and a safe and healthy place to be. There has also been conversation that some families are already getting assistance in paying for their child care. That is true. There are a couple of social services that are supporting families with their child care expense. Out of the over 200 children that WASA Child Care provides care for, we have 16 children that are getting some support. 9 of the 16 children are before and after school program. 9 of the 16 children are in our before and after school program. It is important to note that the families that are in need of some extra assistance have to go through an application process to meet the criteria to be awarded the funds. This is not just a handout. In the most recent Extension Education and Economic Development Committee meeting, there was conversation about use of the ARPA funds as being a one-time grant and that it would not solve the bigger problem of childcare. That is not ongoing funding. I absolutely agree. This is spot on, but I believe that I can speak for my fellow child care providers that we would welcome any one-time grant. Yes, that it would not address the low wages of staff, the lack of health care, or other ongoing issues, but it would help with the purchase of new heating and air conditioning units so that we can keep the children comfortable, replacing a kitchen that has cupboard doors that fall off randomly because of age and poor quality, fix a parking lot, provide updates to elevators and such. My guess is that other child care providers have the same list. The one-time funding grant through this resolution would allow us to address one-time issues that then in turn allow
30
us to
seconds.
provide a safer place for children to be. The money would be welcomed. From the perspective of a child care provider, I would ask that you vote no on Resolution 5523.
Thank you. And next we have Kelly Borchardt.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to publicly comment about a subject that is of great importance to me as the Executive Director of Child Caring for the past 18 years. If you're not familiar, Child Caring is a nonprofit organization located here in Marathon County that helps to recruit and retain child care programs and helps families search for child care. We're sort of recognized as an unbiased local expert around child care. We work with programs like WASA Child Care. And on multiple occasions, I've addressed the EEDC committee during their discussions about child care because I'm also part of the Marathon County Dream Up team. And if you've heard about Dream Up, it's a cross-sector group of community representatives that formed in 2022, and we were forming to apply for a strategic planning grant. The county actually was the lead for that grant. We received the funding, and the funding was successfully allocated to child care programs. This was a grant through the Wisconsin Department of Children and Families. And to understand the context of the current child care crisis that we're facing, county board members received a copy of the newest Forward Analytics report, and it was titled Priced Out, the Steep Cost of Child Care in Wisconsin. And in my written comments that I sent to all the board members, I highlighted some of those comments, but I wanted to just focus a little bit on some that are very Marathon County specific that we pulled from our agency, Child Caring. And, you know, Dave mentioned the town hall meeting next week, and this is just a soundbite of some of the data that you'll hear presented. Did you know that in Marathon County, full-time child care for one baby could currently cost you $350 a week? There's one center that just raised their rates to $350. So that family will pay over $18,000 a year for one baby in child care. We're understanding through the Child Caring that many programs will be raising their rates anywhere from 10 to 30% by the end of this year as a result of the reduction in a child care counts funding that the child care providers have been receiving for the past 3 years. And in June, their amounts were reduced about 50%, so they're already experiencing some cuts. Many of you probably heard about the $170 million that the governor just put in to pull that program out until June of 2025 at the reduced rates. Just so you know, Kay talked about some of the teachers at Wausau Child Care. The current wage of teachers in Marathon County who work in child care, $14.26 an hour. So less than $30,000 a year for a full-time child care teacher. Only 40% of child care programs in central Wisconsin actually offer health insurance. One more staggering statistic to share, if you haven't heard this already, in the past 10 years, Marathon County has lost 58% of its regulated child care programs, which results in over $1,000 fewer child care slots. So we've lost over 1,000 in the past 10 years. In our role as a child care resource and referral agency, we would not support reducing regulation of child care as suggested by the resolution. Child care certification standards and licensing regulations protect the health and safety of our youngest, most vulnerable citizens. In fact, young children who need the most care and support should be held to the highest standards of care and supervision. I gave you an example in my written comments of a situation that about a parent that had called our care that had some significant safety concerns. The other thing I would mention is that all child care regulations are determined by the state of Wisconsin, so a pilot project at the county level, as suggested in that child care resolution, would face some significant barriers since all regulation is set by the Wisconsin Department of Children and Families. However, regular feedback, especially gathering that feedback from families and the child care providers like Kay from Wausau Child Care, is super important. The issue is that we need immediate solutions. The issues we're facing around affordability and accessibility won't be solved even in the long term by reducing the regulation. The Marathon County Dream Up core team is focused on immediate solutions like public and private investment as suggested by Mr. Ekman. The cost of providing quality child care cannot be supported by parent fees alone. Marathon County Dream Up core team's recommendation is that local child care providers need additional support to continue to offer high-quality, accessible child care to
20
families in
seconds.
our community so that parents can remain in the workforce. This doesn't even begin to address the benefits of high-quality child care to young children and how it can greatly support early childhood brain development. In my written comments, I referenced the fact that there are many counties in Wisconsin that have committed dollars to support child
Kelly.
care.
Time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, that was the extent of the public comment, and I thank all the public commenters, and we'll move on to item number 8, and that is the educational presentations. First, we have item 8A, Standing Committee Chairpersons or Designees. Supervisor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. I'm going to give 3 different updates. Yesterday, Jim Griesbach and I were in Madison as part of the County Ambassador Program, which is run through the Wisconsin Counties Association, and this is the second time that we've been down there this year, but we try to advocate for legislation favorable to the county. There were 5 bills or 5 issues that we took to them. One was modifications to the kinship program that would change the eligibility for kinship to expanded families and people that have an emotional connection to the child. Kinship is in lieu of foster care and allows the children to be placed in a more friendly, family-friendly environment that is more beneficial to the child and helps maintain those family connections. There was overwhelming support for that. Representative Schneider is the author of that. We also talked about mental health as a upcoming issue. This year, there were efforts to try to expand the community support program, requesting $30 million. That was not granted. We talked about just the need to look at having the state fill in where currently they pass through federal dollars and many times not matching it with state dollars. It would be nice if they would match those. But it's important to Marathon County as we begin to look at, we've talked about in several of the committees, expansion of the crisis assessment response team. A critical service. We provide that 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and the CART program would be very beneficial in evenings and weekends. Funding for that could come out of additional funding from the state. We talked about highway safety. Jim Griesbach has been probably the one highway commissioner in the state that's been most vocal on highway safety issues. One of the things that they're working on, and Representative Callahan from Lincoln County is going to author in the Assembly, and Senator Teston in the Senate, is a requirement that all driver's education programs have 30 minutes of work zone safety training. The desire is to bring everybody home safely, whether you're driving or working, and there have been too many accidents. We also discussed changes in the fees for property transfers. Last December, this board passed a resolution in support of efforts to take the property transfer fee, which is currently $3, and split it 50-50. It was 50-50 from 1969 to 1981. When it was $1, the state increased it to $3 in 1981 and only gave the counties 20%. There's a proposal that is going through the legislature that would lower the fee from $3 to $2, but then split it and phase it in over a 3-year period, 50% for the county and 50% for the state. The state would lose some revenue on that, but we would receive more. And the final piece of legislation dealt with video conferencing and to change the way they approach video conferencing. Currently under certain child protective placements, Chapter 51, there is the opportunity to use protective placement if there's an objection. They have to bring expert witnesses in. This law would change it so that if there was an objection, the court could make the decision as to whether or not to allow participation of experts by video conferencing. We've just, as a county, invested $400,000+ in $600,000+ in increasing our capabilities in the courts to allow for video conferencing. This, while it may have minimal impact on us, it will be a godsend to rural counties where expert witnesses have to travel great distances and allow, there's a shortage of those professionals. It would allow them to become more efficient and still provide the protections to all the parties involved. We also, I thanked all of we met with 6 different legislators or their staff. I thank them for their commitment to increasing shared revenues to the counties, and we also discussed the status of broadband projects in the county. On a second issue, the broadband task force meeting for next Monday is being postponed one week. And the reason is we have recently entered into very significant discussions with both Charter and Frontier relative to a grant application through the Capital Projects Program, which is a state grant. There's $42 million. The applications are due November 7th, but we have not they have not completed their proposals to us, and we felt as if an additional week would give both of those companies an opportunity to finalize their proposals, bring it in. We still don't know what the ask of Marathon County is. We've had some discussions. So we've delayed it 1 week to give us a better opportunity to receive that. It will, the deadline is November 7th. If we decide to move ahead, we will need to vote on a resolution supporting those resolutions at the November 2nd meeting of the county board. But we'll try to keep you as informed as we can as we move ahead. And then finally, the Human Resources Finance and Property Committee met earlier this week and authorized for publication the budget based upon the numbers that were contained in the administrators and accepted by the committee for the budget. We will continue to review and approve or review amendments, and we will present those to the board on the 9th. The committee still have an opportunity to make comments and provide input up until that date. Next Tuesday, we have PFM, which is our financial advisor, coming in to discuss with us how we should use some of our fund balances. This is in response to some issues that were raised and concerns that were very legitimate relative to how we're using our social improvement fund balance. We wanted to get a good understanding of how that might impact us, as well as what opportunities there are relative to debt financing. And just a reminder again that the budget hearing is on November 2nd with the vote on the final budget on the 9th.
Thank you. Any other chairs or designees standing committee reports? Okay, we will move on. So we have with us this evening the executive director from the ADRC, Mike Ray, and so he has a update to the board, his annual update on the ADRC. So Mike, please. Yep.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come and give you my annual spiel and updates. So Mike Ray from the ADRC. Just a brief history about this on.
Gotta be green, light
Oh,
green.
there we go. Yeah, thanks. Look at that tech support. Not only is he a county administrator, he is also the tech support here as well. So thanks, Lance. Very efficient. So I just wanted to give a quick update in regards to the ADRC. So just as a background of what we are, and I always start with that just so you have a great understanding of why I'm coming to you as a county board and giving you an update. We are an organization that serves 4 counties. So we serve Marathon, Lincoln, Langlade, and Wood. We are formed by those 4 counties to provide the statutorily required ADRC services and also the federal Older American Act programs. So we're an integrated agency that provides both of those under one umbrella. Through an intergovernmental agreement, a 6603 intergovernmental agreement that forms us as an organization. So we have an independent board. We have 2 supervisors from each of those counties that serve on our board. Supervisor Dickinson and Supervisor Lemmer represent the Marathon County Board. Actually, Supervisor Lemmer is also our board chair as well. And one of the great things about us being a regional entity is really the efficiencies that we can gain by having that model. It really is, the model that we have is fairly unique in the state, but has been recognized throughout the state and by the Department of Health Services as a model that provides the best service and also has the most efficiencies for the counties it serves as well as the residents that we provide service for. So for an example, in regards to budgetarily, we've been an organization since 2008 as a regional organization. So that's a few years. And in that time, we've had 0 increase in not only our state funding, but our federal funding or our tax levy that we receive from our counties. So that's a significant period of time. And if you don't know, during that period of time, the population of 60 and older individuals has drastically increased and will continue to increase drastically until at least the year 2040. So over this period of time, by having a regional entity and something that is able to provide service across 4 counties, we've been very efficient with those dollars and be able to utilize them to the best of the ability to be able to serve our residents within our 4 counties. I will say, within the last couple of years, just as every department is facing, we've had challenges financially. Again, our costs have escalated. One of our programs, just for an example, our Meals on Wheels program, which serves every nook and cranny in all 4 of those counties. The cost for meals has gone up at least 30%. And so our budget has not gone up 30%. And so having to find ways to be able to make that and make that budget has been challenging. Thankfully, within the last 2 years, not thankfully because of the pandemic, but thankfully for the dollars that came with the pandemic, we've been able to utilize ARPA dollars to be able to fill some of those gaps. Those dollars will be going away in September of next year, and so we will be continuing to look at, how do we face that challenge. As an organization, something that we've really done is really looked internally. How are we structured? What is our staffing? Every position that we have that's open, we evaluate to make sure that it still has, the benefit and the need for that position to be replaced. Look at it if there's different ways that we can do those positions. During this year's, over this last year, we've actually been able to reduce our positions by 1.7 FTEs, which doesn't sound like a ton, but one of those positions was actually an administrative position, which can have some cost to it. So we're constantly evaluating, constantly looking how we can be efficient, constantly looking at our budget and how we can best serve. But the fact of the matter is, we're at where we're at, just as many programs are. So just to give you a heads up, or just a little overview of some of the services that we provide, I mentioned Meals on Wheels. That is one of the big services that we provide. And one of the benefits of Meals on Wheels is not just the meal. That is a great benefit because it's a nutritious meal that's prepared or that's designed by a dietitian, but also gets out into all these different areas of people living independent in their home, and help them stay independent. We have eyes on them. Sometimes that's the only person they talk to anytime during that day or week. And if there's some issues or concerns going on, we can relay that to people that can provide some support for that or get them the support they need. We also do that. So we also have staff that are experts in understanding what the resources that are available and how to keep people as independent and healthy in the setting that they wish to remain in. So most people, that's within their own home. So if we can keep them within their own home, independent and healthy, and utilizing their own resources for as long as possible, we're also being good stewards of public dollars in that way as well. We have caregiver support coordinators. Individuals that are caregivers don't necessarily sign up to be a caregiver. They become a caregiver due to an event of a family member or a loved one, and now you're a caregiver. And what does that mean? How do you take care of yourself? How do you make sure you're providing the best support for that individual you're supporting as well? We also recently, within the last couple of years, have what are called dementia care specialists. So as the population ages, so does the prevalence of dementia. So helping people understand what that means, what a diagnosis of dementia means. So you can only imagine going to a physician, having maybe some memory testing done, and now they present you with a diagnosis of dementia, and then they walk you out the door and tell you to come back in a couple of weeks. What happens? What do you do? What does that mean? So a lot of things go through your mind. We have staff that can help understand what the progression is, what the steps are, and how to live and be healthy. So a lot of services that we provide. Again, I just wanted to provide you with an update in regards to what we do. And I know that boards really like statistics, so I'm going to provide you with a few statistics. So in 2022, in Marathon County alone, we served about 66,000 Meals on Wheels. We also have what are called Cafe 60 sites, where we contract with a restaurant in some of our rural areas, where a person can take a voucher to that restaurant anytime they're open, and get a meal off of a specialized menu. And we served around 6,500 of those meals. Our resource specialist team had 11,000, almost 12,000 contacts with individuals within Marathon County alone. Benefit specialists, which currently right now are supporting a lot of individuals with Medicare Part D and understanding Medicare, had a little over 1,000 contacts. So we have a pretty significant impact within Marathon County, within the community. Our numbers continue to increase on an annual basis. I did bring you some copies for your reading, for you to maybe as you're trying to go to sleep this evening, of our annual report. It's got some great information of us as a region and how we look in our financials and all those different aspects that are just great things to read about. Have a copy for you at the table, but with that, I'd entertain any questions that you have as well.
Questions for Mike?
I always get off pretty easy when I come here. So
Supervisor Robinson, please.
So you mentioned the threshold relative to funding
Yep.
Coming. What challenges, if those dollars aren't replaced, are there?
Yeah, and honestly, and I'll just put kind of a dollar figure to it. We had a roughly this year we utilized roughly $400,000 in ARPA funds within our organization. A significant portion of those were to our nutrition programs. So, again, as the cost of food and gas and all the different aspects of providing those meals has gone up significantly, and we did just hear that there's been no increase on the federal level because those are older American Act program dollars. We plugged that hole with ARPA dollars and with some of our levy that we receive from our different counties. So, you're looking at, going into our 2025 budget. With 2024, we've got that ARPA dollar still continuing. 2025 budget, looking at a hole of around $400,000 that we're looking to, figure out how we're going to do that. So, some pretty significant challenges with that.
I guess just to follow up, that 400, is that just for the Marathon County portion, or is that all the four?
That's all four counties. All four counties,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you.
Yep, and within our budget, we lump everything together. I can break things down by county, but we lump everything together into one budget. It allows us a lot of opportunity for shifting resources where they need as well. So, yep.
Supervisor Stravinsky, please.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. Thank you for a very informative report. It's a lot of good, very, very good work that's done. It's very important work. And both Supervisor Robertson and Chair Gibbs have already, asked a couple of questions. I'm going to follow up on that a little bit more detail. We're in a very high inflationary environment. Gas prices are, I would imagine, a key driver for your costs, or at least one of them. But what are you looking at if you stretch the budgetary timeline out 2 or 3 more years? You're talking about $400,000 next year. Have you started looking at that and saying what is the outlook 3 years, 5 years from now in terms of what kind of hole you're in?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I came to you last year, I had no white hair or gray hair at all. And, looking at a 3 to 5 year projection is what's caused this. So, it's really challenging. I can project what the hole is going to be. The how to fill that hole is going to be the challenge. And that's something that we're trying to face because, we do a ton of advocacy work on the state level. We're constantly talking to our legislators. We had a big ask within legislation this year backed by some bills, and we had asked for $33 million in an increase from the state budget, and we got 2, which, if you spread that across 72 counties, is pretty insignificant. So, yes, we've looked out 2 to 3 years. I can tell you where the areas of our biggest gap is quite honestly in our nutrition, and then that's, what it's going to lead to if we don't find dollars to fill those gaps is service disruption, wait lists, not able to provide that service in a timely fashion, only serving maybe meals at a really narrowing down the criteria for that. So, a lot of different things that I don't love to even think about, but, things that we may be facing.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up because what you didn't do, and I'm not trying to pin you to the wall on something and say, you said 3 years ago that it was going to be XXX dollars. But if we don't have an idea of what kind of hole we're looking at, we have no way, that's no data. Okay? So if we're looking at 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road that the organization is going to come back to the 4 constituent counties and say, we've asked the state, we've asked the federal government, we've gotten nowhere, we're coming back to the county level. We need to know what that hole looks like.
Yep, absolutely.
And we need to know now what it's starting to look like. Your best guess, your best estimate. We're not going to hold you to it, but we need numbers, not flowery language. So if you have a number, please share it.
$400,000 at minimum. And I appreciate that, and I get that from a board perspective. I'm not coming to you and asking you for more money right now. I can tell you that. I anticipate that we will be, at some point in time, coming to our counties. One of the things I've prided myself, our organization's self on, is not asking the counties for more levy, quite honestly, because I do think that this is a state and federal hole at times that should be filled. But the fact of the matter is that we will probably be coming to knocking on your door, and I will have data. I will have my I's dotted and my T's crossed, and I know that my feet will be a little bit more to the fire. And we'll be having those conversations starting very early, probably in this next year, probably early next year. So, Lance, do you want to add a comment?
Administrator Leonard, please.
You want to talk about, to your point, Supervisor Sherfinsky, some of the ways that we've started to have conversations about how the county can, and I shared this with you all before about how we've gotten a lot of bang for our buck from intergovernmental organizations, municipal organizations. That's good. Some of the challenges when we don't collaborate as much as we can, we miss some opportunities. So you want to talk about 2 things that Mike and I have talked a lot about, which is potential relocation of the ADRC, and also fleet management, sharing of fleet if that relocation happens.
Correct. Yes, and that's something we're definitely looking at, and we've had a lot of conversations over this last year because, again, we're not looking at things in a silo and only on a year-to-year basis. We're trying to project out long-term, and, yes, we are definitely looking at the potential relocation to the Lakeview Professional Plaza. Did I get it right? Lakeview campus, thank you. I always forget what the name of that is. We are looking at that potential, which, right now we're paying a lease amount to a private landlord. So, we're taking in levy dollars and state and federal dollars, and we're paying a lease amount to a private landlord. If that were to be something our board would approve, we would be renting a space from Marathon County on their campus. So, looking at some of those dollars to what that looks like coming back and forth. Fleet management, again, we have travel time. Our staff are out into these rural communities. We're paying mileage for all those different aspects. What are some things that we can leverage, within the county, and not just Marathon County, but within all 4 of our counties, to be able to, look at that and maybe shrink that big pool of need of dollars. So, we're looking at all those different aspects. I'm not really prepared tonight to give all the details of all the different things, but I definitely can come back to the board and show what we're doing, what our strategic process is, how we're trying to account for some of those things within an organization. I'm not at panic mode yet. I'm not coming up here in panic mode. I just want you guys to understand the challenges that we face as well.
Other questions for Mike? Supervisor Gisselman, please.
Yes, thank you. With the rising level of poverty, especially among older citizens in Marathon County, the thought of older citizens, really diminishing their nutrition levels, I think really scares me. I think that somewhere speak about a healthy Marathon County, and I would think that would really be one of the top priorities of this county, to make sure that our citizens are have equal access, adequate access to nutrition programs, because I think that that's one of the elements, personally, of a highly healthy county. And you spoke before about some questions with regard to the future. I don't know if you can answer with regard to the diminishing of programs from the ADRC, say within the last few years, if you've been on a constant level of income and budget. I'm sure that with everything going through the roof, has there been diminishing services to our aged population that you can perhaps identify? Because I think we need to know that as time goes on, with inflation and a flat budget,
Yeah.
programs get diminished. And I think that is. I think we should be noticing that also, because I think that's something we may want to, in your preparation for the future, start to make sure that we can deal with those issues and those programs that serve the aged of Marathon County.
No, I appreciate that and that perspective and that question. So, just in regards to the level of service that we provide, I will say there has not been a decrease. We have not decreased the level of service that we provide. In fact, we've actually really increased based on, dementia care specialists coming in, some of the classes. We have narrowed a focus in some of our prevention-based classes so that we're focusing on falls specifically as one of the most prevalent things of the state of Wisconsin. We're actually number one in the country in falls per capita, and Marathon County is actually really high in that level per capita as well for individuals that are falling. So we've tried to, instead of just doing a ton, we've tried to narrow down the scope to make sure that we're focusing on the important. But the other aspect that we've done is, as a regional model, how do we make sure that we're using all the efficiencies of that model? So within this last year, we used to answer your phone calls. If you were to call our office, we used to answer it by office, and that person would talk to a person right there. And sometimes they would play phone tag back and forth, which also can cause frustration. So we went to a more regional call model where you're getting a live voice and a person that can answer your question. Now that person may be sitting in Anago, or they may be sitting in Wisconsin Rapids. And then if you need a home visit or more direct about your community, then they get referred to somebody from Marathon County. But we're able to utilize that regional approach to make sure that there's efficiencies and that there's not a service reduction. So, we're looking at all those different facets. And again, I don't want to, raise all craziness and say that, the world is falling. But, I just want you to be aware, we have challenges in regards to finances that are coming up in the next couple of years. We will have conversations. We will be looking at those efficiencies. We will be looking at how we can partner together. We will be looking at all the different avenues for advocacy. And if we do come back to you and I ask and have a request, I'll have all the details for you. I promise that.
Okay, any other questions? If not, Mike, thank you so very much for a very informative report. Thank you. So next on the agenda is a notice on the upcoming educational presentation for conduit bonding. I asked the clerk to put this on. Again, you may have seen that up to 4 different committees has already reviewed some of the information as far as a request for conduit bonding. And and all of those committees, or 3 of those committees, the HR Finance Committee, the Triple EDC Committee, and the ERC Committee all had additional questions. And so rather than having the council and the entity and the individual potential that's proposing this provide education 3 different times, I thought the education would be available for the full board. So the full board heard the education presentation at one time. So what I'm asking from each of the committees, or at least is if there was questions that were raised at the committee level and or staff have questions, please provide those questions to me, hopefully by tomorrow, so that I can at least compile those questions and send those off to the presenters on Tuesday so that they can hopefully address those questions that relate to the Conduin Baden project. So any questions on that? Okay. We will move on to review and discussion on Tuesday meeting agenda items. Ordinances, Town of Knowlton, rezone, Tim Vreeland for Andrew Borntrigger. Ordinance 0-36-23. Any questions? Okay, moving on to item 9A2, Town of Wien rezone. Again, Tim Vreeland for National Holdings LLC. Ordinance 37-23. Any questions? And then moving on to resolutions. From Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee, item 9B1A, an offer to purchase a portion of property at Stewart Avenue and 72nd Avenue, Resolution 53-23. Any questions? Supervisor Sandalski.
Yeah, I just had a question on the, so it's a limited or a temporary limited easement. So like the liability and the maintenance costs, will that be transferred then to the township and the city of Wausau? Is that part of the?
Yeah, Corp Counsel's on. Corp Counsel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So the transaction is actually two parts. One is that temporary limited easement that gives the contractors who are continuing to build this trail or walkway bike path area the ability to go on our land for a small portion so that they can complete construction. The other part of the transaction is actually a sale of part of our existing property so that that can form the right of way and they can utilize that as part of this trailway or walkway. So once the sale is completed, if the board were to approve the sale, the county would have no liability related to the portion that's being sold. And the temporary limited easement would only extend through the time of construction. So that gives the town and city and their contractors the ability to utilize our property for construction purposes, but the easement ends as soon as construction is complete.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, item 9B2, Environmental Resources Committee, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee, and Public Safety Committee. Item 9B2A, a resolution to accept state and federal hazard mitigation grant program assistance, Resolution 54-23. And we have the Parks and Rec Director, Jamie Polly, if there's any questions. And it was through 3 committees and was unanimous in all 3 committees. Any discussion? Okay, we will then move on to, from the Extension, Education, Economic Development Committee, item 9B3A, the Marathon County government's role in providing affordable, high-quality, external childcare, Resolution 55-23. Any discussion? Supervisor Baker, please.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. So this, as most of you probably know, this has been a topic of discussion at EED for, I believe, since the beginning of the year. We've had a number of helpful and informative presentations at our committee, and I want to thank those who presented and who came tonight and gave public comment. Just to provide a little background, I am the supervisor who wrote the sections of the strategic plan that called for EED to look at these issues. I recognize that they're very important, as do the other members of EED. And as far as the scope of work, this is external childcare, so it does not address if we as a county would want to add childcare to our internal operations for our employees. So that would be a function of HR Finance. That was not within the scope of the discussion or the scope of our charter. And we had a number of supervisors who attended frequently outside EED, including Chair Robinson, HR Finance Chair Robinson, Supervisor Limmer, and Chair Gibbs all attended quite frequently and provided input. I'm not suggesting that they would have voted for the resolution, but they were there, and we considered their input. We looked at a number of, and I want to say a couple things in regards to the public comments. Dave Ekman had asked that we keep an open door, and I believe all of the committee members would agree that, we're not trying to end discussion with this resolution. We certainly would welcome, continued discussions. So I'm going to just run through the items on the resolution quickly, or maybe not as quickly as you'd hope. So whereas the shortage of affordable, high-quality childcare is directly impacting Marathon County families and indirectly impacting Marathon County businesses through workforce shortages. So I think we all agree with that. We are not in disagreement that this is an issue. We do have, differences perhaps in what the county's role should be, and that's what we are trying to define. So whereas the EED committee has been tasked with preparing recommendations for Marathon County government role in supporting affordable, high-quality child care with input from non-EED supervisors and other Marathon County stakeholders per Marathon County's strategic plan, objective 10.3, outcome measure 3. So whereas the certified family care segment of the child care industry has been decimated, declining from 5,000 certified family care providers statewide in 2001 to 580 in 2018, diminishing a substantial source of lower cost, high quality child care slots. So if you think about that, that's an astounding decrease in the number of certified family care providers. It went from 5,000 down to 580. That's almost 90% of certified family care providers left the business or left, stopped operations in a period of 17 years. And so I looked at, I tried to find, once I found that statistic, then there's footnotes for the statistics. Once I found that, I tried to find out reasons for that. And I came across a paper by Dr. Angela, don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, Rachidi, R-A-C-H-I-D-I. And I'm going to refer to her as Dr. Angela from now on, so I don't butcher her last name. Whereas at least one report, and this report is in the EED packets, indicate that state regulation, including the Young Star rating system and the reauthorization of the CCDBC legislation in 2014 has played a major role in the substantial decrease in the number of certified family care providers. The answer has become clear. Many states chose overly burdensome regulation and procedures that pushed many child care providers out of the market, replaced by higher cost center-based care. Additionally, Young Star likely has contributed to a decline in family child care providers that has limited parental choice and driven up costs. So this is an individual that has spent considerable time and effort. She has a PhD in studying this issue, and I have never met her. I did not inform the Badger Institute that I was using their article because I wanted to keep, distance. I didn't want it to look like I was collaborating with them, which probably would have been okay if I had. But unfortunately, then they contacted me and said that, I don't remember their exact word, but there was like an attack story in one of the local websites. So I'm a little later, I'm going to read her response. So they contacted me and said, thank you for using our research. And unfortunately, the only way that we became aware of it was because we were attacked by one of your local news sites. So, and they are an organization that is focused on limited government, personal responsibility, personal freedoms, free market, and those are, items I support personally. So whereas the Marathon County has an integral role in certified family child care, as the Marathon County Department of Social Services is a local certification agency for certified family care providers. So this is an involvement that we have in the childcare industry. As a committee, we were looking for something that the county has a role in. And at one point, prior to making the resolutions or the suggestion to add this to our strategic plan, Chair Gibbs and I had a conversation. He said, we're already involved in childcare, so we need to have this discussion. So we were looking for, a way that we are involved in this and a way that we could make an impact. And that's one of the items that we identified. Whereas the state provides financial child care assistance to lower income families through Wisconsin Shares with a statewide total of more than $300 million provided over the last 12 months to more than 17,500 Wisconsin families to assist in providing child care to more than 31,000 children. So I want to make the point that the issue we're discussing is, for the most part, not a question of providing lower income women or lower income families with support for child care. The state does have a program for that. One can argue about its effectiveness, but there is a program for that. And Dr. Angela, in her article, says that is one of the most beneficial uses of taxpayer money is that support for, it has been studied and proven to be one of the best uses of that money. So we're not arguing about taking away funding for lower income individuals who need a hand up or, who need some assistance. That's important. And we're not talking about taking that away. Rather, what the requests are to basically fund for the state or the county to fund childcare for all families, not for lower income families. So, that's a policy discussion that we should have, but just to be clear, it's not just lower income families, it's for all parents, for all childcare. Whereas family childcare providers must be either certified or licensed to be eligible to accept Wisconsin Shares funding. So Dr. Angela makes the point that overregulation has specifically hurt the lower income family who use Wisconsin Shares because they do not have any option but to go to certified or licensed childcare providers. And I don't believe that she argued that should be changed, that they should be allowed to go to non-certified providers, just that the certification process should be reviewed. So whereas the federal and state government have provided $10,641,766 of taxpayer-funded subsidies to Marathon County child care providers since May 2020, a level of funding which was not widely known to local taxpayers or local governments, and for which local input was not sought or approval received. That was kind of an eye-opener to me, and I believe others on the committee, that the county has actually received over $10 million directly payments to childcare providers. And, you know, that's I believe what's behind a lot of the concern is because this is, you know, they have been using and, you know, arguably needing that money to stay in business, and that is potentially going to drop off now. It looks like the governor has, according to some reports, found, quote unquote, found $170 million that's going to go towards that. So it's not going to make the issue go away. It may make it, you know, be a year and a half before the cliff comes. Whereas expanding childcare subsidies is contrary to the goal of increasing the number and percentage of self-sufficient households in Marathon County, as stated in Marathon County's strategic plan, Objective 10.3, Outcome Measures 1, adopted April 25th, 2023. So one of our speakers had said that our preferred approach is that one parent should stay home and care for the children. And that may have been expressed in the meeting. I'm not sure that was the actual sentiment. I often expressed, and others as well, that caring for children should be the primary responsibility and right of the parents and not of the state or the county. That doesn't mean that parents should not use childcare. It's just that it's the parents' responsibility to provide, you know, the childcare and to select that and to be responsible for the quality and safety of their childcare provider. So it's you know, in no way am I arguing that parents should have to stay. One parent should have to stay home and not use childcare. It's just that, you know, that should be the role of the parent, the primary role of the parent, with perhaps assistance from, you know, from government. And I'm not arguing to get rid of certification, but I am saying that, you know, there's evidence that we should look at the level of regulation. So then we have 3 now therefores. Now therefore be it resolved that it is not the role of Marathon County government to subsidize external child care using taxpayer funds from the property tax levy, the sales tax levy, or from ARPA funds. And this is the therefore that's getting the most pushback. I would say that members of the committee, including myself, were seeking a way that the county could help with this problem that didn't, you know, that was beyond just providing funding. And we ask, I believe, at least 2 or 3 of the speakers that were here, you know, if they had suggestions of things that we could do. And maybe we didn't listen properly, but, you know, we didn't feel that we heard those, you know, that there were things that the county should do. And, you know, we're not against Dream Up, so I mean, there are some things like that. But mostly, you know, I believe it comes down to, and if you look at the forward analytics, the conclusion, the last sentence says, without a consistent source of funding, childcare will remain understaffed and unaffordable. And, you know, that's the perception that we got from most of the speakers and most of the discussion, is that, you know, the idea that we need to provide either on a federal, state, or county level funding, direct funding to childcare to mitigate the high cost. And we didn't hear a lot of other ways that the county could, you know, other roles besides funding. And if I'm missing something that someone presented, I sincerely apologize and would be open to, you know, that discussion. But we decided, you know, as 4 of 6 members who voted, that we didn't think it was the county's role to fund that we thought that that's an expansion of government. We thought that's primarily the responsibility of the parents and of their employers. And we also think that, you know, to some extent it should be a market solution. Rates, not everyone necessarily, you know, is going to go on and have childcare. There are grandparents, parents. We think in Marathon County, it's there's a lot of families in Marathon County, a lot of close-knit families, and that's extended family taking care of childcare. We think there's more options in Marathon County than there are, say, in a large urban area in most cases, and that may not be true, but that was the perception. So the next one is now therefore be it further resolved that in general, the county believes that a significant part of the answer to Wisconsin's early care and learning problems is to reduce government regulations and place more authority in the hands of parents and child care providers. And that goes back to that 5,000 to 580 decline. I mean, there's, statistical evidence that overregulation has driven the lower cost segment of the market, because if you're taking care of childcare in your home, if you're providing childcare in your home, you already have that overhead of your house covered, you're already living there. So it has some impact on the cost structure. And often perhaps the parent, the childcare provider is also caring for their own children. So the next one, now therefore be it further resolved that the county will identify state and county regulations that negatively impact the number of certified family childcare providers in the county and provide options for eliminating or mitigating these impacts, including but not limited to providing recommendations for feedback to the state and developing potential pilot programs to reduce unnecessary childcare regulation while still managing high standards of health and safety. County staff are directed to provide a report to EEDC detailing the results of this effort on a quarterly basis. So you heard tonight, and we heard frequently, that it's not feasible for the county to develop a pilot program. I'm looking for a way to solve it, not for a way, not for reasons we can't solve the problem. So I would kind of push back on that. We have had some pilot programs already. I think we have a good reputation. We're trying to be the most prosperous, healthiest, and safest county, and we need to be a leader in this. We need to look at those regulations, see if maybe there are none that we think are that are driving costs up and reducing childcare slots. But I think it's something that the county is already involved in. So it's one of the things that we identified as a good role for the county to look at. And I don't think that those 90% of certified childcare providers that no longer exist, we didn't have those people coming in and advocating. We had people that are representing the licensed childcare, the larger facilities, advocating for more taxpayer funds. And it's the county's board as a whole to decide whether that's a good role for Marathon County to be in or not. So now, the last thing I would like to do is read the statement from Dr. Angela. So she's a senior fellow at American Enterprise Institute and a visiting fellow at the Badger Institute, and she asked me to I asked her to attend virtually, and she had a family commitment, so she couldn't, but she asked me to either read or distribute this. So regulation in childcare in Wisconsin. In my report, Off Track, an assessment of Wisconsin's early care and learning systems for young children, and that again is in the, that report is in the EED packet from the last couple meetings. I argued that quality regulations have likely driven some childcare providers out of the childcare market, resulting in less overall parental choice and higher cost without measurable improvements in outcome. Research supports this argument, finding that 1, regulations drive up childcare costs without improving child outcomes. 2, that certain regulations such as staff-child ratios and class sizes do not meaningfully improve child outcomes. And 3, Wisconsin's quality rating system, Youngstar, did not improve child outcomes in a validation study. I will offer several examples. A 2017 study by Devon Gorey and Diana Thomas, published in Applied Economics, explored the effects of childcare regulation on cost and quality and concluded, our analysis of cost and quality of care suggests that a number of existing regulatory requirements could be relaxed to provide cost savings to low-income families without significantly reducing the quality of childcare. They specifically explored the effects of child-staff ratios and lead teacher education requirements, finding that they increased childcare costs but did not result in better childcare outcomes. In the journal Educational Evaluation and Policy, researchers published a meta-analysis in 2017 summarizing the results from multiple studies and concluding that little evidence exists to support class size and child staff ratios in childhood education programs. Furthermore, there is direct evidence from Wisconsin's Young Star program, the state's child care quality rating system, that Young Star's quality requirements do not improve child outcomes. Researchers from UW-Madison conducted the Young Star validation study in 2016 and concluded the data did not find that children in 3-star or higher Young Star programs were demonstrating greater gains than children who were attending 2-star programs. There is also evidence to suggest that government regulations tip the scale in favor of certain child care providers, which is why some providers support government regulations while others remain opposed. Government regulations disproportionately harm small providers, as a study by researchers at the Erickson Foundation found in a 2021 study titled The Shifting Supply of Regulated Family Child Care in the U.S., a literature review and conceptual model. Taken together, this literature suggests that reducing certain child care regulations can reduce child care costs without meaningfully affecting child outcomes and can increase fairness in the child care market. So I will email this out maybe tomorrow. I'll email this out to all the supervisors, and I will also, Dr. Angela has written a new paper in September of just last month. So I will email that new paper and this response that I just read to the supervisors the next day or so. Thank you.
Supervisor Seefeld, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the EED committee meeting, I did not vote for this resolution, and the reasons why is that sending a resolution to the state like this could hurt our support for high-quality child care. And sending this resolution might down the road in year or two for assistance from the state and federal government. Sending this it might give them the opinion of saying, hey, well, maybe Madison County don't want our help. You know, I can't support this. I think we do need high quality child care. I don't think we need to deregulate, bring down, how do I put this, parts of child care providers. I think with having the regulations that we do have will protect our children down the road. I think if you lessen the qualifications, not saying that it's going to, but it could. So at this point, I am not going to be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Supervisor Rosenberg, please.
I'm also not going to be supporting this resolution. I'm unconvinced. Dr. Angela's report is written from an organization that already holds those views, and it isn't published if it doesn't maintain them. But I don't know how you go through all that. The problem comes because childcare is too expensive. You're not paying the childcare workers enough, and you're churning them over. Adding more work to them isn't going to help that. It's an awful solution. Changing the regulations, I can make a lot more kids read at grade level that way. I can lower poverty rates that way. But it doesn't really help anything. You can't, an infant is more than, taking care of an infant is more than diapering and feeding. You have to talk to an infant, you have to play with them a little bit. Even young, they can't understand you, but those are the things that help an infant grow. Those are the things that have to happen, interactions with people. You need them there. As to should the county have its thumb on the scale for childcare, idealistically, I don't like it either. It's not what I want. But you wouldn't get, I'm a strong supporter of broadband. That's not helping my constituents. We just got wired for fiber optic everywhere. It's for the greater good. It's the right thing to do. As is this. We need to help. This, in the end, is saying, too bad, so sad to all the employers and all the people struggling with childcare. You're on your own. We should turn this down.
Supervisor Robinson, please.
We have a workforce crisis in this county, and we have employers that I think will soon be looking to relocate elsewhere because they can't fill all of their positions. And when they do so, we'll lose those jobs. One of the things that we can do, there are a few things we can do, and other counties have done them. They've looked at what the county's role is in childcare and in housing. We need a seat at the table to talk about what some of those solutions are. Dave Eckman has indicated that there's a town hall meeting next Wednesday evening to talk about this issue. I think we should delay any action on that until we hear the results of that meeting. We've heard from Forward Analytics that the steep cost of childcare in Wisconsin, is basically pricing people out. They didn't talk necessarily about the regulatory burden. They were talking about the fact that we're paying in Marathon County $14.26 an hour without health insurance. And when you look at out of the 546 categories on which data is available relative to hourly rate, the wages for child care workers went from 28th lowest in 2015 to the 13th lowest in 2022. People vote by where they apply for jobs. And if we can't afford them, one of the reasons that people are leaving child care is because they can make a lot more money elsewhere. And child care is hard work. I've got young grandkids that wear me out every time we're together. And it takes a special person. But people are special until they have bills to pay and medical needs that need to be addressed and health insurance that they want procured. We need to think carefully about, do we want a seat at the table? The HR Finance Committee has been relatively narrow in our discussions. We've been looking at how do we look at that issue for our employees. We know that we've lost employees because of the lack of child care. And if we've lost them, other people have lost them. We need a seat at the table to figure out how we, in that public-private partnership, may be able to help. Is it the use of the ARPA funds on a capital grant over the next 2-3 years to fix the HVAC system, to upgrade the kitchen, to upgrade other facilities that will allow that facility to do more? We can look at that. This resolution says, no, we can't. I think we want to be careful to keep our options open. Dave Eckman is right. If we don't create an environment where we are attractive to young workers, we will lose the battle. And there are other counties, conservative counties, that are choosing to enter the child care arena, limiting their role. Nobody's asking for a full-scale subsidy of every slot. But I think there is a role for us to do. I would encourage us to delay action until we find out what comes out of that town hall meeting. To work, you heard some ideas tonight as to how the county can help with one-time money. I think there are roles and opportunities for us moving forward.
Supervisor Sandalski.
Thank you, Chairman. The overburdensome regulations and the ratio of children to caretakers is not sustainable without government subsidies. This creates a very high cost per child, which makes it unaffordable to many families. Without special rigorous license requirements, a mother can only care for up to 3 children that are not their own. Secondly, according to Wisconsin child care regulations, public schools are the only entity eligible for subsidies. Seeing the great decline in parents enrolling their children in public schools limits the families that use the public school daycare. From 2019 to 2020, the national public school enrollment dropped from 50.8 million to 49.4 million. This is a drop of 1.4. Wisconsin lost 25,000 students in public education enrollment in that period. Another 32,000 pulled their children out from 2020 to 2023, which many of these opted for homeschooling and also private schooling. That may take a large number of the daycare that they won't need anymore. Also, these public schools must enroll in the Young Star program in order to get any subsidies. If anybody wants to see any of the information, I got a lot of that here available, there where I got the resources and all that. And as history teaches us, mothers can care for many children. In the 1800s and even into the mid-1900s, families had many children, 10 to 20 per family. One mother would care for all of them while the father worked the field. My grandmother grew up with a family of 13 children, which were cared for by one mother. So when the government tells you that only a very small number of children can be cared for by one care worker, that is a big lie. We need to take a lesson from our ancestors. Question 1, I would ask a mother or father, would you rather leave your children with a good friend or a good neighbor that you know well, or a complete stranger? By allowing mothers to take on more than 3 children and less regulation will provide more opportunities for friends or neighbors to start their own in-home child care. So you can know the person that cares for your children quite well. This will strengthen communities and create more healthy and prosperous children. I brought the idea of starting a daycare up with my pastor to help with the community to assist in the large number of children in the church and in the community. After he looked into it, he came to the conclusion that with the overburdensome regulations, it makes it very, very difficult for anyone to start and to run a daycare. I hope we can all come together as a board to strengthen families and make it easier for communities to work together for the greater outcome. The government is not the long-term affordable solution to the child care deficit. It's the people, the communities working together with less government intrusion. I will fully support this resolution. Thank you.
Supervisor Shafinsky, please.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. And I would like to thank the committee for working on this resolution. It's clear that a lot of work has already been put in. A lot of input has already come forward. As Supervisor Robinson suggested, it looks like there's more input coming from the community, so perhaps holding off on the decision may be appropriate. Having said that, I recognize quite well that child care is in, to some extent, a no-win situation. If you look at it from an economic perspective, and I've thought of this quite deeply for a number of years, I feel very strongly that if you look at how we reimburse or pay teachers as a broad category, I look at this and I look from a societal standpoint from 10,000 feet up, what you find is that in society, we pay child care teachers, and many of them are truly teachers. There are some who are babysitters, but many are teachers. They are at the low end of the scale. They get paid the least, and we pay university professors the most. In some respects, that's upside down and backwards. Why do I say that? I say that because if you look at from age, from birth through age 2, age 3, age 4, up through the elementary schools, you look at the educational prospects that go on during that time period, that is when you have the most impact on a child's education and their future life. I guarantee you that if you've lost a child by the time they're in 3rd grade, that they've decided they have nothing to learn from school, you're not going to catch them and bring them back to the table in middle school. You're not going to bring them back to the table if you've lost them in 5th grade. You're not going to bring them back in high school. But yet we pay the high school teachers more than we tend to pay the elementary teachers. We pay them far more than we do child care workers. Part of that is economic, and that is because if you look at where the funding comes from, the funding for the university system, the funding for the public school systems rests on all of the taxpayers as a whole, as a blanket. Everybody pays for that. Child care funding primarily is a function of the parents. So I don't have any answers. I'm just laying out observations there. However, having said that, the question then becomes, is it a function of county government to get into the business, if you will, and I use that term loosely, of inserting ourselves in the child care process, evaluation, and into that whole segment of family life? And I don't believe that it is. I do believe that when we look at what drives cost, government regulation, and perhaps and government regulation is needed to a point. But overregulation drives up costs dramatically. If we want to look at that, look at the rate of inflation over the last 20 years, look at the rate of increase in the technical college tuition, look at the rate of the increase in the UW tuition. Both greatly exceed the rate of inflation. The fastest way to make something unaffordable is to have the government in charge of defining how and what and where it is delivered. The more government involvement you have, the higher the price goes. So, I think people have very good intentions on saying, but give us money. County, please, we need your help. State, whomever at whichever government level. We look around us and we look at any situation where the government has gotten involved. We look at education, we look at medical care. Government becomes the driver of making things unaffordable. For that reason, and also for the reason that I believe that ultimately with dollars comes control, and control means pulling that control away from families. I don't believe that we belong in that process. Our job is to try and clear the field of obstacles, and I think this resolution is a good faith attempt to do that. So I will certainly be supporting. Thank you.
Supervisor Bushman, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Thank you. First off, I want to mention that we have the freedom to choose any job we want to go into. Childcare is not unique. Lots of individuals work jobs very hard, and lots of us are in the economic that we are. losing pay, and we see that, again, entry-level jobs make lots of money. So it's not fair to have one field line up and ask for ARPA fund just based on that. I agree with Supervisor Sandelsky that we're getting away from having government trying to help us out as a family is not the way to go. It used to be that you looked for neighbors for help, other parents, you work together and problem solve, and that's exactly how I did with my children. So having government do it for you is not helping anybody. It takes a village to make a family grow. Childcare is a private enterprise, and anytime a private enterprise, they always do things better than when government gets involved. As Supervisor Scherfinski said, it's just going to make the costs go up. And we're not talking about all regulations going. One of the things we talked about was how childcare could have children at home be at the right number, but then when one school-age child comes home, all of a sudden at 3:15, now they're over the limit, and now that child has to go home. So that's one regulation that we were referring to, not by any means disqualifying or lessening the qualifications of good childcare providers. And we talk about problem solving this. I think we need to look more upstream instead of downstream. It's the employers that are trying to attract employees. And to do so, they need to be more supportive of the families. And you do that by getting creative with how you have jobs. You're either having job sharing, or you're doing the hours that works with school hours, being flexible, or remote work. So instead of trying to just fix the childcare situation, it's more on the employer's part. And again, with our committee that we were on the EED, we voted for passing for this resolution for that reason. Government does not belong in family life and raising children. That is up to the parents. Thank you.
Supervisor Lemmer, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we can. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. You know, I have lots of questions. I always have lots of questions, but I think I'm just going to hone in on the final now, therefore be it resolved. This might be best answered by the author of the resolution. The now, therefore be it resolved says that the options would be including but not limited to developing potential pilot programs to reduce unnecessary childcare regulation. I guess I'd like to know more about those pilot programs. For instance, who's going to determine the pilot program? What would that plan be? How long will it last? What are the metrics? So if you could give me a little more direction on this pilot program, I would appreciate it. And I may have a follow-up.
Well, we'll get to that as soon as we get to that speaker as requested to speak again. But I will mention that I have been monitoring the individuals that are online, so Supervisor Lemmer was recognized before Supervisor Oberbeck, but that was only because she came in the queue prior to Supervisor Oberbeck requesting to speak. So again, I'm not trying to take people out of line. Supervisor Oberbeck, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, my background is I served on Wausau Child Care Board for many years, and I saw different aspects of what child care needed to do. One of the things regulations do is set standards. It doesn't mean you have to be at the highest standard, but it gives people guidelines on when they're looking for child care, what that type of facility can provide. There's always Wausau Child Cares. I mean, when I was on the board, we looked at trying to get to the highest level because that's the people that were looking for child care were looking for that service. Now, you're telling them to deregulate something. If you take those standards away, you're putting our children at risk. And I think that's a very dangerous thing because there are standards. I mean, we're taking care of our 18-month-old grandson right now. My wife's a teacher. She's retired, but now that takes all of her time to take care of one individual. And he's quite active. So I jump in once in a while, but when you look at the ratios, there's a reason for those ratios. They've been studied. To have someone come in from the outside and say you do not need those regulations or those standards, then every child care provider is going to be doing standards by themselves. They're going to be setting it. You won't know what you're getting. And I think that's a very dangerous situation. Wausau Child Care, when I was on the board, we looked at expansions. We looked at different ways of providing services. The before and after school programs were excellent. They provided a service that the community wanted, but employers were starting to look at how they were going to provide daycare. And they needed to do that. And that's where I think the real challenge will be, is getting the people that need workers involved. And they're going to have to look at that. And we were looking at Aspirus on how to serve a population or a workforce that was so varied and you required different hours, required different staffing. It was very difficult to even look at that. So I think you're looking at a very complex issue and trying to simplify it with a resolution that tries to fit everything into one scenario. And that's the reason I will not be supporting this. There is no simple solution. It's going to take a lot of people to figure this one out so that we have a viable workforce in the future. As people retire, think about it, the younger population, what they require, they have the least financial resources. They're trying to do 2 jobs. They're trying to pay off student loans. And then we're saying you need to pay $18,000 per child to do child care. Now Charles is solving that one. I think rather than doing a resolution, people got to gather together, start thinking about what the solutions are, and then try to do that with government involvement, with employers, with the community. I mean, we even looked at what the elderly could do as people retire. Can they provide this service, such as in an adult, in a senior center or whatever? What are the options to look at? I think people got to start thinking creatively rather than saying no to regulations or standards that have been set up for so long and have been tried and tested. So I hope this doesn't pass and that it goes back to the table for discussion to learn more.
Supervisor Wilhelm, please.
Thank you, Chair. One thing I haven't heard from anybody in the discussion is I work in a factory. I have for 19 years, 16 years on the off shift. And I worked with probably a couple hundred individuals that had families, and they chose to work second or third shift to have daycare for their kids. Coming from the businesses that are suffering, some of them should be bringing it up where they could have flexibility where a parent could stay with the children until the other parent got home during the week so they could be watching their kids. Because when I first started working, I bet you we had 3/4 of our shifts on the off shift were taking care of their kids. And now our off shift, we can't find people. And I think we're down to maybe just a handful that are on the off shift just to take care of their children. And it's an aspect that people could look at. It's another avenue where they're not paying for daycare. And it's a little bit stressful on families because parents aren't seeing each other as much. But it is something that should be looked at, and employers could actually bring that up and say, hey, we're paying you more to do this, and we can help you alleviate some of the issues you're having with childcare. And I really think that's something that should be looked at, because in the past, I remember people, they'd work 10, 12 years on the off shift as their kids were growing, and then when their kids got to a certain age, they could finally move on and work day shift. And it worked out very well for them. So just something that we could look at and maybe add to that.
Supervisor Baker, please.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. So, as I mentioned on Monday, I haven't been able to hear yet at the HR Finance meeting, I have a fair bit of expertise in HVAC systems. I have a fair bit of expertise in finance and accounting. I don't claim to have expertise in childcare. So, I find it interesting that, and sometimes we're told we should listen to the experts, and I find an expert, PhD, somebody who studies this, and then she's discounted because she's got the wrong viewpoints. So in response to Supervisor Lemmer's question, I don't know what the pilot program should be. This is a beginning of discussion. We have several people in our social services department that are dedicated, if I understand right, maybe if I'm wrong, Administrator Leonard, welcome to update or correct me. But I think we have two people dedicated in our social service department to working on the certification program. So I would expect that, the social services department would be the source for developing that pilot program. I know that we had a contentious discussion about Family Keys where, I believe it was Family Keys, where we were told that, we have a pilot program, we're gonna have a pilot program, and that's one of the best things that we can do. We're gonna be leaders and help the state with developing this. I think we were 1 out of 3 counties. So, I think that those of you who say a pilot program is bad, maybe think about, is it bad, or is it just you don't like that you don't like the topic of the pilot program? So again, I'm not an expert in childcare, don't claim to be. I haven't developed all of those details. That's for the county board and for staff to develop if we decide to adopt it. I am relying on an expert, which is Dr. Angela. And I also want to point out, so the comment that's a response to Supervisor Lemmer's question. The comment that I was going to make was, I hear that there's a level of concern about changing the standards in terms of how many children can be watched. And, I tend to think that it can be a little more than 3. I'm not suggesting it be a lot more than 3, but 4 or 5, maybe. But that's really only one part of the whole situation. So I'm going to read a little bit of what the expert wrote in regards to regulations. Another element included in the Young Star evaluation criteria requires providers to demonstrate developmentally appropriate environments. Evaluators must observe a variety of things during their visits that contribute to their overall ratings, with some elements easy to observe, such as 1 book for each child present at any given time, 6 different examples of fine motor materials, 6 different examples of art materials. However, and she says those are the good, I believe I read, those are the ones she agrees with. Other evaluation criteria are entirely subjective, including a requirement that all staff-to-staff and staff-to-child interactions must be positive or at least neutral. I'm not a child care expert, but I did have children, and I believe that having all staff-child interactions must be positive or at least neutral tends to make me think that whoever wrote that is not a child care expert either. I don't believe that happens. And staff and children demonstrate enjoying being with each other, making it unclear how evaluators observe and rate these elements in real time. Other criteria are similarly subjective. The problem with such a long list of rating criteria is that it likely creates a burden on child care providers to achieve compliance with little relation to care quality or better child outcomes. This level of government micromanagement constrains the number and types of child care providers, restricting supply and driving up cost. When providers cannot pass these higher costs onto families, policymakers across the political spectrum blame the child care market rather than the government regulations that are driving up cost by restricting competition and increasing compliance cost. Policymakers often respond by increasing child care subsidies to meet these higher costs rather than questioning the logic of regulations in the first place. So, I would suggest that those who argue that this resolution actually does nothing are misguided, that this is really getting at one of the root causes of the problem. Thank you.
Administrator Leonard would like to add some as far as the number of certifications.
You're correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Supervisor Baker, you are correct. We have 2 staff that, as part of their role, not their entire role, but as a part of their role, do child care certifications. I just want to clarify a little bit, and I too am not an expert in child care certification, but Krista is in the back. They certify based on compliance with the state standards, not local standards. So stated differently, we don't have the ability to approve a quote unquote something that we'd call a pilot program that doesn't comply with those existing standards, if I understand that correctly. Am I right, Krista? I see Krista nodding her head and said that's correct. So, thank you.
Okay, next we have Supervisor Leonard.
I have a follow-up, please.
Supervisor Baker, please.
Do we have the authority to suggest to the state or request the state that we do a pilot program with evaluation?
I certainly think we'd have the ability to do that, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Supervisor Lemmer, and that'll be followed by Supervisor Shafinsky. Supervisor Lemmer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So perhaps Administrator Leonard answered my question, but when I think about Family Keys, that was a program, and we piloted it. It was already formed by somebody. If we don't have a program and are asking social services to do that, social services doesn't provide childcare. So I'm still not sure what this pilot program would be and how it's going to be administered when we do not have childcare facilities. So that and then maybe if that's moot, we don't have the ability to do a pilot program with that. Okay, with it being in the resolution, assuming it passes, which to be clear, I certainly hope it doesn't, it says, including but not limited to, and then it goes on to say developing potential pilot programs to reduce unnecessary childcare regulation. Can that be in the resolution if we don't have any ability to do a pilot program? And I don't know who I'm asking that to, maybe the parliamentarian.
I would defer to Mike. Mike, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that I necessarily have an answer to that question either. I think what Administrator Leonard said with the clarification after Supervisor Baker's follow-up is really all I would have to add to. Well, we don't have the ability to change childcare regulations ourselves. Nothing stops us from reaching out to the state about a pilot project, and that would be up to the state about whether or not they would work with us on that. So I guess that's about all I have to add.
But how does that work when we do not have a child care facility? Who's going to do the pilot program then?
So I read the resolution as, and one of the opinion members could step in and correct me, but I read it as talking about developing pilot programs regarding regulations. So I don't know if that refers to specifically how regulations are applied and whether or not the state would work with local pilot program regarding how to apply regulations. I don't know. That's just a thought. I don't think it refers necessarily to providing child care directly, but addressing the regulations. But someone else probably has a better answer than I do.
Okay, Supervisor Shafinsky is next.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. Looking at the final, now therefore it be resolved paragraph, I read that and I think we're getting off into semantics. And the semantics, of course, are important. But the way that I read this is, first of all, it is not in any way, shape, or form suggesting that all child care regulations, and the state is the source of the vast majority of those regulations. There's nothing in this resolution that says all regulations should be eliminated. Regulations have been being developed since at least 1968, so we've been involved with that for 55 plus years. And of course, we all know that bureaucracies tend to be self-serving and self-growing. There's no organization that does not like to create new regulations. It's a case of Purnell's Law. You have to justify your reason to continue to hold your job. You look for new regulations, new paragraphs, new extensions. That's just human nature. So what this resolution does is it's not saying eliminate regulations. It's looking at this saying perhaps we have gone too far. Perhaps at this point we have overly burdensome regulations that are negatively impacting our ability, although it may be well-meaning. And the purpose here is to stimulate the investigation and develop whether or not and how some regulations perhaps could be revised, reduced, some eliminated. It makes no attempt to identify which ones. It certainly does not make an attempt to say all regulations shall be eliminated. But it does say that, over the last 55 years, perhaps we have become a bit too rule-bound, and perhaps we should look at ways to relax those regulations. Now, when you say, but safety, okay, that's a fear factor, fear of the unknown. I'm going to point you all, we all grew up and we all remember Ma Bell. We all remember having the phone on the wall and there was one phone company. We went through deregulation. The phone company was broken up into multiple Baby Bell systems, and as a result, we have technology on our desks. We have these iPads. We have cell phones, which I'm holding one up, which would have never been developed by one monolithic organization. It hadn't been. So I think that we have to get over the fear factor that only government can solve the problem. More problems have been solved in this country by individual people working together than have ever been solved by governments in and of themselves. So I think there's the people who are rising up in well-meaning saying we can't do this are doing so out of a fear. And I think that we have to understand that we can look at regulation, we can say, no, perhaps we've gone too far. We need to loosen the strings. We need to loosen those bounds a little bit to be more creative, and we'll find more solutions out there. So I don't think that it's disingenuous to insinuate that this resolution is trying to eliminate all regulation. Thank you.
Supervisor Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For all of us having this discussion here tonight, and for those that are following closely online or who will be reviewing this meeting, I would like to have a little bit more information myself, and I would like to know, perhaps this is a question for Corporation Counsel, but where in the Wisconsin statutes, or where are the state standards for child care, where are they located in state statutes and or the county regulations where it would be applicable for us on making a decision here when this comes to the vote? Thank you.
Administrator Leonard.
I have a couple. I can tell you from my work on the Dream Up group, there are a lot, so I'm sure I'm going to miss some. But Specifically to your question, Supervisor Straub, section 48.665, excuse me. Thank you, Krista, for sending that link. Has some regulation relative to childcare as well as the administrative code provisions within DCF section 202. I also would certainly, if I might, Mr. Chair, if Kelly from Child Caring, she knows those regulations better than certainly I do. If I've missed any, is that the main ones?
One is family child care licensing.
So
the other
two,
one is group.
DCF 250 and DCF 251. All those are available online. Just make sure that when you're searching for those sections, you type administrative code and search within the administrative code of DCF as opposed to within the state statutes. I hope that's helpful. Mike, I don't know if you had any others.
Corp Counsel, do you have anything else to add?
No, I can do a review and see if I can find anything additional, and if I do, I will share that with the board.
Thank you.
And if I may follow up, Chair, please.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just so we, those that are following this issue online, I urge you all to please look into these ordinance, because I want to find out at least what the minimum state standards are, and I think we all should at least know that. And perhaps there is regulation, unnecessary regulation that's burdensome. I myself, I've heard others speak here tonight that they take care of children. I myself do that. I'll be doing that again tomorrow. I do it 3 times a week, and sometimes on weekends I take care of a 1-year-old, a 2.5, and a 3-year-old. And they're boys, and we work with them and interact, and it's no different than when I was growing up. Someone mentioned it earlier, I think Supervisor Sondelski. What about the old style? There were no rules and regulations. You just knew how to take care of kids from various age groups. And then they go into school, and obviously they get their elementary level of education going. So I think overregulation might be something that this gentleman that spoke earlier at public input, maybe there's more to talk about, but regulation does affect people and outcomes. Overregulation is not good for anybody. Thank you.
Supervisor Boots. Supervisor Boots. And still
I'm sorry, I was muted from not on my end. So
go ahead. Now I can hear you.
Hello.
Now I can hear
sorry.
you.
All right. Thank you. And the fourth whereas, I just would like to point out, Youngstar likely has contributed to a decline in family child care providers that has limited parental choice and driven up costs. So I do agree with what most people, some of the people have said about, yeah, we should look at regulations. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that we should always be looking at things in government, whether they're right or wrong, because that's our job. Maybe there are things that we could look at. I know when my kids are growing up, we're out in the rural community, and there's not a lot of daycare providers out in this area. So that was a limiting factor for some of the providers out here. Like, I can't meet the standard, and I can't watch this many kids, and it was an issue. So I think there could be things possibly done at the state. But I think with the way our workforce is right now, we need to take a closer look at how we're going to do this, because why we wouldn't give Dave the chance on Wednesday to discuss this before we take this to a vote is way beyond me. I think we should give him the opportunity, knowing that our businesses are working with the state to look at these type of things. And for us to interfere at this time isn't helping anybody in our county. So I don't think this is a terrible resolution. I mean, there's things in it I agree with, things I strongly disagree with, but I think we're moving too fast on it. I think with Dave saying what he said today, we need to look at that, and then we need to look at all the things that were discussed today. So that's really all I had to say today. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll weigh in a little bit now myself. One of the things that WCA in one of their 2 weeks ago calls They have a Monday morning call, and during that call, they talked about the forward analytics presentation that was out there and talking about the cost of childcare. And one of the things that was very clear was with the new shared revenue, what do we want? We want more business doing more economics to continue to do additional retail, manufacturing, and we heard from our economic development or from our Chamber of Commerce saying, look, business is struggling. We even know that from inside that Marathon County is struggling and lost employees because there is no child care slots out there for people when they have children. We also know that we have a worker shortage. We clearly have a worker shortage. How many ads are out there right now for looking for workers? The Forward Analytics has said that there's people that have chose not to go back into the workforce simply because it's not cost effective. The thing that I listened to when WCA was talking, they said, is county going to solve this problem? No, not by itself. There's no way. Is the state going to solve this problem? Not by itself. No way. Is the federal going to solve this problem? No way. It is incumbent upon us to be at the table to at least listen to where there's opportunities. But in some cases, the way this resolution in some ways almost shuts that out. I'm not saying that we don't need to look at regulations, because I think we do. But at the same token, when we turn this deaf ear that says, no, the county can't do anything, we know that we've got a county government that has 700 full-time equivalent employees. North Central Healthcare, roughly 800. Between the two, we have 1,500 employees, and how many child care slots does that workforce need? I don't have the answer to that, but we've looked at, or started to look at, potentially a child care facility within Marathon County to provide an opportunity to be able to recruit individuals. If that child care center takes away child care workers from the private sector, we haven't solved any problems. We've actually made possibly the problem worse for the private sector. So we need to be at the table and at least discuss with the business community what their thoughts are and what there's options on. So I would encourage us to postpone at least passing this resolution till after the business community has had a discussion, and we've had some discussions at the state and federal level at where potentially there is opportunities for a reduction in regulation, if those are actually well thought out. We haven't said anything other than we need to look at all the regulations. I'm not saying we don't need to look at all, but we haven't identified any regulations to actually reduce. So I would be in favor of postponing this, at least until we've had discussions with the business community. That's what our economic development and our chamber is asking us to do. Stop, wait, and let's look at what options are there so that we are at the table and not creating additional problems in the community if we created a child care center for Marathon County and North Central Healthcare. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to announcements and or requests. Any announcements and or requests? Okay, we're down to item number 11. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Rosenberg and seconded by Supervisor Drabek to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.